came to the bear, it said it had the feet of the bear. Why? We know that the bear is a bloodthirsty animal. And while the lion only kill or primarily kill when it's hungry and needs some food, no, Mr. Bear is very nasty. He will kill you even when it's not hungry. It's like just for the fun of it, or just, well, he just believe, well, listen, you shouldn't be there, or you might pose a threat to its young ones. And so bears are called bloodthirsty animals. And so the Medes and the Persians, you notice the difference between the Babylonians. When the Babylon captured Jerusalem in 606, it brought Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and other bright minds back to Babylon and trained them. Never did you hear of the Medes doing that. They would just kill sometimes senselessly. And so that's why it is said that they had the feet, that the papacy had the feet of a bear because of its killing nature. Between 50 to 150 million people were martyred during the Dark Ages under the reign of the papacy from 538 AD to 1798, when Napoleon General Berthier went into the Vatican, took the Pope back in France, and so that's where the deadly wound, right, took place, right? So basically, when you combine the bloodthirstiness of the papacy and its lion-like ability to spread fear, that's what with most of us. Isn't that true? And so sometimes you go on YouTube or you go on different entity, or the Pope makes a statement, and it's like it just sends shockwaves through Adventists. But you know, it's all part of Satan's work. While we shouldn't fear the papacy, because perfect love casts out all fear, but that doesn't mean we turn our back and don't really, understand or be acquainted with what the works of the papacy. But the most dangerous aspect of the papacy is not persecution, whether in its lion form or its bear form, its bear entity or trait. It is leopard likeness. Why do I say leopard likeness? Because if you notice the beast, it did not say a lamb like beast. The papacy is not described as a lion like beast or bear like beast. It said leopard like. So then we go to the third kingdom, Greece, that began in 331 BC, right, when Alexander defeated Darius, right, in the Battle of Arbela, and so that brought on the scene the Greek Empire. And so, right there, why would the papacy not be described as lion-like, neither bear-like, but leopard-like? You see, the Greeks were master at building their kingdom and expanding their throne and their dominion. You see, as Adventists, we love to study prophecy, I hope, and some of us do. And so what we generally study or understand that, yes, in 606, in 538, Babylon was conquered by the Medes and the Persians. We call that the Medo-Persian Empire. And then that lasted, as I said, until 331 BC, when Alexander the Great defeated Darius. And so we said, yes, the Greeks conquered the Medes and the Persians. And then we go on to say now, and we are right so far, we go on to say that in 168 BC, the Romans conquered the Greeks. And that's not true. That's not true. All right. We said, oh yes, that was when Rome came on the scene as a conquering nation. And that's not true. Let me tell you why it's not true. I might say, well, oh, you disagree with historians and whatever. Yes, I have a right to disagree with historians. All right, because historians are not gods. The Greeks, let me give you an example of this. Say you marry someone and you take them to your home, and they can't leave your home, but you have some children with them, and you and your children adopt their religion. They are Adventists, but you now start going to church on Sunday. Right? You're supposed to speak English. You're from an English-speaking country, Jamaica. but then your wife speaks French. And so you start speaking French, your children learn French. You eat French meals, right? You use French philosophers. You take up French educational system, French sports or entertainment, French arts. Now, who conquered who? You didn't conquer that woman. That woman conquered you. Even though you have her at home, and well, you think, well, she can't leave home without you giving her permission and whatever. In truth and in fact, she conquered you. Yeah, like how Solomon woman conquered him at, in the later part. So the point I'm making is that actually Greece conquered Rome without Rome realizing. And it is through what we call Hellenization. Hellenization, the Greeks were masterful at it, right? And so what they did, it's Hellenization is a way of spreading, or the way of spreading Greek culture, where Greek make you little Greek. So we're in the Babylonians, the Romans, and the Medes and Persians would somewhat try to compel you to be in subjection. The Greeks didn't do that. They taught you your culture. And so by you learning their culture, then you become little Greeks. And so that's why they were so instrumental in flipping the coin on the Romans, right? And see what they did with the Romans. The Romans abandoned their religion and adopted Mithraism, which is a religion that first put up Sunday as a day of worship in honor of the sun god. The Greeks were the one who did that. And so the Romans adopted. So if you conquer me, how can I take up your religion and abandon mine? And yet I believe that I conquer you. Secondly, the Romans abandoned Latin, which was a spoken language up until then, and adopted the Greek language. So that's why the Bible was written in Greek, the New Testament, and even the Old Testament later on was translated into Greek, because Greek was the English of the day, the common language spoken throughout the Roman Empire. So is that conquering another nation? Also, if you notice, you don't hear much of Roman philosophers. You hear of the Aristotle, yes, the Socrates, the Platos, right?
And that is after the fall of Greece.
Exactly, that's also after the fall of Greece.
During the time of Roman.
Exactly. So can you abandon your philosophers and adopt my philosophy and say you conquered me? No. Not only that, the Romans adopted democracy as part of their Senate. That's how their senators came to power. And today we still have it in America and different, right? So democracy was birthed in Athens, and the Romans adopted it. So even part of Greek's political system, they adopted. But it didn't stop there. Greek entertainment, Olympics, theatrical performances, all of those. Greek, Greek stories, like Hercules and all different literature, you name it.
Yeah, holidays.
Greek holidays. Exactly, right? Greek holidays and so on, all of those, right? But we haven't gotten to the real one yet, the granddaddy of it all. Also, the Greeks studied, the Romans studied many of the Greek military successes, especially Alexander. And sure, they use them. So they again, right? They were using Greek methods. And there are other things, but the main one I will mention to you now is education. That's where it's at. He who controls your education controls you.
Yes.
But people today, our known world.
We're getting there. We're getting there. That's where I'm coming. But go ahead.
There's a military part of Greece adopted by our nation.
Definitely. Yeah.
There's a word. Academia.
Definitely, and I'm going to get it. That's where I'm going to take it.
I need a good understanding.
Right. That's where I'm going to take it.
When the historian uses the word conquer, I know the point you're making, but
when they're using the word conquer, could it be that they are thinking from a military
Well, that's what
standpoint?
I'm saying. Yeah, they are thinking
Just from
from
a
a military
military
standpoint,
standpoint.
and the others they were right, but this one they were dead wrong.
But even military wise,
Right? They were dead wrong because you see they were just looking at it from the fact that Rome was able to militarily keep them in subjection. It's like in Florida some years ago, an alligator, a snake swallowed an alligator and thought everything was fine, but it didn't end there. The alligator bit the snake on the inside and killed it too. All right. So yes. Pardon me? The snake swallowed. So no, the snake swallowed the alligator. Yeah, it was the snake that swallowed the alligator. No, no. I read the report. The alligator died eventually because it suffocated, but it bit the snake. All right, we won't go into the dispute. All right. But then your point is, what I'm saying, the fact that something is on the inside, it's like you swallow some poison. And somebody would say, oh, you conquer the poison. But what does the poison do? It kills you from inside.
Yes.
All right. Well, this is what pretty much the Greeks were doing to the Romans without the Romans realizing. Right? They nurtured the Romans. So we get into the educational system. And again, if you notice today, he who controls society's education does what? Control society. That is the most important aspect of influence. There's nothing that will influence a society more than what is called education. And if you
part of that education is the media. So people think it's only going to school.
right.
Media is used to inform.
Okay, we'll talk about that.
Those
We'll
who don't go in
definitely.
the school system.
So now, if you think about education, we generally think about, oh, that is to be in a formal setting where you start learning your alphabet and words like CAT, cat, simple words, RAT, rat, MAT, mat. No. Education is much more than that.
Yep.
Education is the art of knowing how to do something. So when a baby is born, the baby doesn't go and say, well, I know where mommy's breast is. First, one of the first education a person when they are born get, which is a baby, is to be placed where the breast is because the baby can't find it. They're not like animals that can go and find mommy's breast. You never see piggy or doggy lifting up one of the puppies or one of the young ones and put it by their breast. The Lord put that instinct in them. But for babies, they start educated immediately by the mother, putting them right there at the breast. And that's how education primarily begins for most persons, right? You see? Then the mother teaches them, eventually, and the father how to talk, this, that, you name it. Go pick up. All of that is education. As a matter of fact, by the time we go to school in first grade, we are almost fully educated without knowing it. Now, what do I mean about that? When I say fully educated, it doesn't mean we don't learn things anymore, but our character is pretty much formed by the age 7. That's why the Catholics will tell you, give me a child from birth to 7, right? And then birth, right? Not just 2, birth. Once they can get them, well, they'll use the 2. But if they can even get them from birth, oh please, right? Now the Catholics know something that we don't. You see, we as parents believe that when we see certain things in our children at 1 and 2 and 3, just let it go because they'll grow it out. No, they don't grow it out that easily. Now is the time to really deal with it. I'm not talking about slap the child or whatever, but pay attention to those behaviors at that age, right? If it's a good behavior, nurture it. If it's not, find some way of discouraging it because that is like a young, you're looking now, that behavior like a young a kind of snake now, right? Venomous snake, by the way, right? You're looking at that will only make more rattlesnake or something that will only get worse. And so, with what the Catholic said, there's a lot to learn. And the Spirit of Prophecy also said that by the age of 7, a child's personality is fully formed. Right? And so sometimes we are waiting now to intervene when the child is like a tree that is pretty much set. Right? You get a tree growing for 7 years and then try to bend that tree, it's almost next to impossible. Right? How they train tree from they plant it, you notice they start training that very inception. But the same. So education is not just a from a setting of environment where we learn maths and English and chemistry and physics and biology or whatever. Education actually is the art of knowing something and how to really do it. And so anything, even to walk, you don't see the child just get up and walk like that, right? There are times when you even have to teach the child how to walk, right? Sometimes you have to teach the child how to creep, because some children, so that is really so education and Hellenization are pretty much one and the same. So when we said that the Greeks Hellenized the nations around them, the Romans and so on, right? It's actually they were educated. And that means something like what Grata said, even the very news, which is not news, the very so-called news, whether from the television, the newspapers, the radios, the internet, it's really one of the most effective and influential form of education. Right? Exactly. Let's use the corona. And they drumbeated us over and over that listen, the corona is such a terrible thing that we need to put on a mask, right? You see, so that I call that muzzle, right? You see, social distance. So by the way, you're all too close to me and each other, right? If we were to follow them, right? And so they drive that fear in people. And what does the media tell us? Right? That listen, we have roughly in United States, using United States as a place, roughly at least 100,000 people die from coronavirus. Now, generally between 50 to 80,000 people die from the flu virus each year. So from round about the end of January, it seemed like nobody died from the flu virus in the United States anymore. Everybody died from coronavirus. So the flu went to Mars or Jupiter somewhere for vacation. Not true, right? In order to drive fear in us that we are so afraid and panic of everybody who die and they can attach corona to it, as some of the doctors tell you, that they are pressured. Right? That once a person has corona and they die, it's coronavirus they die from. We the doctors are told you, right? Right? Two, if they don't even have corona, please search good. Look behind the tongue, look behind the ears if you see corona. And if you can find it there, imagine it there, then they die from corona. Now you know what they have done. They have spread such panic in the and even our church today, Adventist church, is worse, is under that panic.
Even the church.
Right? That's why we only have what, 2 hours of service, right? And we space it out so much that, well, listen, only X amount can come now, right? And now I'm not saying we are supposed to disobey the law of the country just like that. But social impact. Exactly. The church has no influence on the community that we get our marching orders from the community now, right? And you know why that happens? It goes right back also to education. We are told in the spirit of prophecy that the early reformers would not send their children right to the schools of the day who use the curriculum or the books right of that time. Now pause a little. Early reformers, so you might just go to and say, well, that is talking about the 1800s. No, that's talking about the 14 and 1500s, right, as the latest. Now, 14 and 1500, just take a trip back to memory lane and back there in England, in Europe, because there was not United States yet developed. And so what we look at, we can see men like Tyndale, men like not even Martin Luther much you can really say, right? Jerome, Wycliffe, and so on. And if the schools back in those days were seen, not by Adventists, because we didn't have any Adventists with no spirit of prophecy, but by the men and women of that day, that they were so dangerous for the upbringing or the training or the educating of their children. I'll stop again. In those days, there was no theory of evolution yet. Right? There was no media of today, no radio, no internet, no television, right? No public school system. All the schools were church schools, right? Or some other form of private school, which was influenced a lot by the church. And even with that, the Lord said that these people feared that if they sent their children to those popular schools or using those books or those curriculum, they would receive the mark of the beast. So they didn't want to send them there. Many didn't send them. Now, we are told, same thing by inspiration, if we, back in the 1800s, where there was no evolution in the schools yet, no homosexuality being taught in the school, no transgender being taught in the school, and nothing like, well, you are not born a male or a female anymore. None of that was taught in the school, right? You were still taught that you were born male or female. You were still taught that, well, listen, homosexuality is a sin and it is taboo. And that, listen, if you put on a dress as a man or whatever, something is wrong with your head. And all of that is correct. Now, how they deal with you, that's a different matter. But all those statements that they make, they were 100% correct. And yet we are told that if our children went to school of those nature, they would not only receive the mark of the beast, they would help to give life to the image of the beast. In other words, help to form the beast, rather help to set up the beast. Now, pause a little. In this COVID situation, we have our Prime Minister who, fast forward a few years ago, the NID system, right? Where it is supposed to be an ID system. If you don't have that, you can't pretty much buy, sell, do that, whatever. Right? Now, we are not saying that is a mark of the beast. Don't tell anybody I say that. But it lays the groundwork, definitely the foundation for the mark of the beast. And who is our Prime Minister? Right? Is it? Right? Well, right, is a man who went to school up to date, right? And one who is very much familiar and interact with Adventists. But then bigger than the Prime Minister, we have a man called the Governor General, Patrick Allen, who not only went to our school, but helped form many of our schools and build them up. And that man sat there and saw nothing wrong with it either. We have the Mr. Bruce Golding, who laughed at us about this Sunday law business. He should not have laughed at us, because if he knew what happened to him when he said, not in my court, not in my cabinet, right, he would not laugh at us, because if he only knew who brought on some of the troubles on him because he said that, right? So the point is, I'm saying, yes, 100 and something years later, since the Lord had Ellen White pen that statement, just imagine now what kind of schools we have. The schools we have, let's go back into history and see what happened. The Jews, after they came out of Babylonian captivity, would not even have nothing to do with the Gentiles. We can read, well, we studied the other day, Nehemiah, right, Ezra, and what they did. Nehemiah was one such man. I just love that man, right? He said, listen, not even out there at the gate, I want you. No, I'm not saying we should do that today, but this was a man of action called Nehemiah. Right? He wanted his people to have nothing to do with the heathen, especially to marry them, trade with them, and what. And we know that the Samaritans came under Nehemiah while Nehemiah was leading and said, listen, we worship the same God as you do. Why not? Let's have you build the temple, build the walls and whatever, and worship God with you. And Nehemiah and others said, no way. Why they said no? Because they know the Samaritans who were their descendants of their half-brothers and tribe who was brought into Assyrian captivity, right? Their worship was corrupt. Way back from the time of Jeroboam, coming down all the way to Ahab, but even past Ahab, right, and come down, right? But worse now, they intermingle and marry with the Assyrians, so you know what their worship is like, right? Double trouble. Yeah. And so Nehemiah rightly said no. Now, isn't that a warning to us? Don't we see our church making overt, right, and covert attempts, right, with the other so-called churches, which we could say they are certain still, because their worship is corrupt. Yeah, that's a spiritual. Yeah, they might say they worship the same God as we do, Benny, but just like the Samaritans, we know they do not worship the same God as we do. We are not saying they are not those there who are worshiping God in spirit and in truth and don't know better, right? But we should not join with them in nothing whatsoever. Amen. And we have situations where we even gave them commendation that were listening for their service. Now, let me pause. Here are these very ministers who said that the law is done away with. God's law is done away with. Right? And they are the ones now we are marching with peace to stem violence and crime. They are the ones who we should point to that are responsible for many of the violence and crime, because they said God's law is done away with.
Yes, that's right.
But no, we didn't do that. We were so glad to march with them. We were so glad to have prayer with them and prayer and fasting with them. You see, we are not wise like the children of Judah did, where it said no to the Samaritans. But back to the children of Judah. With them separating themselves, wanting to have nothing to do with the Gentiles, with the heathen, so to speak, because they knew that one of the main reasons they were placed in captivity was it because they intermingled with the Gentiles and developed and adopted Gentile practices. So the Lord said, all right, I'm going to put you among the Gentiles here then. Right? And so he put them in Babylonian captivity for 70 years. When they came out, they built up wall and they said, well, listen, no affinity, no association with the Gentiles. But you know, Satan is a very smart. If he was wise, he would do what God says, because with the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom.
Right.
But although he's not wise, he's very smart. And so what he could not get by a certain way to dethrone the Jews, he used Hellenization. He used education. How that came about? The Jews looked around, and during the time of Ezra, Zerubbabel, and Nehemiah, no association with the Greeks, unnecessary association with the Greeks, the Samaritans, and whatever. But after these faithful leaders died off the scene, and you remember if you go back, isn't it the same way with Moses and Joshua and Caleb? They served the Lord and led the people to serve the Lord faithfully. But when they died off the scene, a new generation arose that knew not the God or served not the God of their forefathers. And so they decided to intermingle with the nations around them. Same thing happened after Nehemiah and others died off the scene. The Jews, well, we are coming there. We're coming there. Right? So here, they decided that, well, okay, you know something, we are not going to mingle with them. But you know, it wouldn't be bad to send some of our bright minds to nothing less than the School of Alexandria, the main university of the Greek Empire. This now was now the Romans' time. And so they began sending them down there. So after a while, they said, you know, we don't need to send any more down there, because they didn't. Because by now, the ones who they sent down there had come back with enough Greek influence that permeated the Jewish society. Right? So they could set up now their own Loma Linda, their own NCU, their own Andrews, their own Oakwood. Now, what do you think these Oakwood back then, these Loma Lindas were? Nothing more than little Alexandria, School of Universities of Alexandria. Right? Teaching the very same thing, but only now this time it was Jews who were teaching it and not Greeks. Isn't that the same thing happened among us? But I don't want to forward myself too much. Right? So with that, for example, when Jesus mentioned the parable about Lazarus and the rich man, and this rich man, right, is in hell in an everlasting burning fire. Why do you think Jesus mentioned it? Because the Jews had picked up that madness from the Greeks, from the heathens around them. And so that's why. So you can see little bits of things that permeated the Jewish culture. But worst of all, that the worst part of the Greek educational system that destroyed the Jews was, and the Romans, is that scholastic achievement, academia, as Elder Schooler asked about earlier, right, makes you, right, and place you in a position where you're the cream of the crop. In other words, we call that today white collar work. So your lawyers, your doctors, your accountants, your this, your that, right? They are in a class by themselves. And when your son and your daughter want, especially your daughter, want someone to marry, right? Don't marry a mechanic, don't marry a plumber, so Brother Pierre is out there, he couldn't get a girl. Because none of us want him as our son-in-law. what this thing in the society is that, well, listen, you marry a white collar worker, someone who sits in the office. He is a first class citizen. The Greeks said anything to do with your hands, physical work, that makes you second class citizen, right? And you work with your brain. The Romans picked it up, and that was the undermining of the Roman system.
So that is why I heard two persons say it. And I can tell one a principal and one a very successful entrepreneur. And the both of them were had this thing about their hands. Their hands were very soft.
Oh yes, yes. Shouldn't get dirty.
So they don't work.
Yeah, they don't work physical. Anything physical make you second class citizen. They work, but it's just by the brain.
So that was it's just that's why I just noted that. As you said it, it went back to those two incidents. And two separate incidents. Both of them about how well they check their hands.
Right. So basically, they had a class system in society, and that's what the Jews adopted too, right? Where those who did the physical work, the Romans did the same thing because they came from the Greek, right? They were the second class citizens. And those who philosophize and sit in the office and whatever, and you name it, those were the first class citizens. So since anyone who wants something to is good for their children, right? What would they do then? Exactly. They would influence their child to say, well, listen, look for someone who is of the academia life. Now let's look in Jamaica. How that affects us. We have the Georges, the Caseys, the Calabars, you name it, these elite schools. Right? And this is where we put our bright minds to pass 10, 15, 16 CXC all in once, if they can. And when they come out like that, oh, we put them in the gleaner, or they're placed in the gleaner. Right? Is it? And what happened? Guess what happened? They have. Because you know what happened? Jamaica is not an industrialized society. We're still agrarian and service, right? So we don't have a lot of jobs to offer. So guess what happens? They are so ill-prepared, ill-trained that many of them go into illegal activities, drugs, scamming, you name it, or they go abroad, or they stay home and mommy and daddy still have to give them food, pocket money, you name it. I'm not saying all of them, but this is common in the Jamaican society. Our elite minds have become some illiterate, dependent people, right, on society. The fact that we've adopted the Greek form of education, where when you have that kind of mind that you can pass how many CXC, back in my days it was O levels, right? So you are the elite. There, unfortunately, there have been a few schools that are not like that, and we call them technical high schools. Those are the ones we should have modeled. All high schools should have really been technical high schools. So you go there and you can still pass your how many CXC, right? Back in my days, O level, but you still come out with skills. Why skills? Because you see, with white collar worker, you're mostly dependent upon Babylon for a job. Get it? I didn't say always, but you're mostly dependent on Babylon for a job. So use Gregory and myself. Yeah, I just like this come to work. Gregory dressed in his overall or his blue mechanic clothes and whatever. And then Sister France come. She's not smiling with Gregory now because that is just and she's looking somebody too, right? She's looking somebody, right? So she's not smiling with Gregory. Right? When she drives up her car, she just said, "Well, I need to speak to the manager." The service manager. So I'm called, I come out and she look at me, yes man, he's the one I like, right? He sits in a air-conditioned office, she looks at my fingers and oh please, right? Looks at Gregory nails and whatnot. He's not a real mechanic, you know, you have to understand, right? But he is, right? But he's just not one of the dirty mechanics, right? All right, but anyhow, say he looks like one of the dirty mechanic, right? With his fingers and whatever, you know, right? She doesn't want, and clothes black, she doesn't admire him. Because when he comes out, who wants any black man with any black hand to be putting his hand on her and whatever? But you want something like Dr. Morgan's hand, just soft and nice and this and whatever. But the table is going to turn. Listen to this now. The company that we work for Mr. Brown comes in one day and say, guys, if things doesn't turn around, I will have to close this place, right? And things just didn't turn around 3 months down the road, and so he closed down the place. So I'm laid off. Gregory is laid off. Now I pull out my resume and I'm going around the place, right, trying to find another place that will employ me. And remember, and places only need one service manager. They don't have two, just one. All right, so it's harder for me to pick up a job. However, this hombre here, he doesn't need to pick up a job. He has a skill.
Yeah.
He just print a few cards, right, a few flyers, and say, I fix car at 15 Willoway. Just bring it over. And in less than no time, cars are coming there. All right? You see, right? And guess what happened? After a while, he said, I don't need to go look any job. I don't need to go look a job with Babylon. I'm an entrepreneur. So then he employed my good friend here, Grata. Then he employed Darman, right? And guess what? He's a businessman. Oh, yes. Well, I'm still filling out resume, right? See, right? Trying to find a job, right? Now, not only that, let me tell you, see, a tradesman, it's hard to be the tradesman. They work good money. Once they know they trade good and they are dedicated. I remember, I'll tell you this. My oldest son doesn't have a college degree. And he's been to university for maybe about almost 3.5 years. But when you switch from one school to another, what can happen? You lose credits and they'll throw out this one and all sorts of things. Their program is different, so you have to take this class that you would not have to take at the other university. So when Jay moved from his college in Orlando to Southern Adventist University with not even one penny owing to anybody. In 3 quarters, OJ owed $30,000, right? 10,000 to the school and 20,000 to the U.S. government. Even though he was warned by us, do not go there because some of our Adventist folks are tricksters. And I'm saying it. Oh yes, and I won't hold it back. And what they did, they sucked my son into the deception by saying, when you come, you won't have to take out any student loan. We'll have work study program and grants and scholarship. Knowing that once they get him on the campus, they can change the tune. And that's exactly what they did. Right? He was studying computer software engineering, and in 3 semesters from owing nothing to 30,000. Well, against our recommendation, against but the kid was about 23. What do you do with a 23-year-old? You have to allow him, right, to make his mistakes. So, like the prodigal son, he went there, and after a year and a half, he called us and said, Daddy and Mommy, come and pick me up. I'm out of here. And rightly so. We went and picked him up. You see, I didn't take him there because he would not say his dad took him there. I wasn't going to get no part of that blame. Right? But when he was ready to come home, all right, and that's how I believe in children. You want to go out there, if you pack your box, you can go out there. Right? You see, when you want to come home, I'll come and get you. Right? But remember, the rules still stand. They haven't changed. Right? So he came back, and after 2 years of working faithfully, right, washing dishes, right, with a company because he said he would not cook none of their stuff because they cook meat. He's not handling none or whatever. He's striving to be a faithful Seventh-day Adventist. One day, his mom came to me and said, what about that college in town that teaches the same A+, Security Plus, Network Plus program that OJ had said that he wanted to enroll in before he went to Southern? We said, okay, well, I said, check it out for him. She checked it out. They said, yes, not even high school leaving diploma he needed to get in there. This is United States. Right? But in order to get the grant, so we wouldn't have to pay out of our pocket or his pocket, right? Then guess what happened, right? He needed a diploma or a high school leaving certificate, and he had more than that. So he was accepted into the program. Uncle Sam paid him, sent him $5,500 to pay all his tuition and him some money to help with his gas. So what? I dropped him in the morning, pick him up in the afternoon. An 18-month program that didn't have the bells and whistles and the caps and the gowns and the whatever, just like what he was doing at Southern, but didn't have all of that frank and dangles and whatever, and you walk down with the professor and take pictures and you owe them how much money, 60, 70,000, 100,000 at the end of 4 years. No, nothing like that. In 2 months, he finished that 18-month course and landed himself a job paying double what he was making, right? Then $20 an hour, then 25, then with NASA 63,000, then 80,000 with NASA, then 120 with Amazon, 200 and something thousand with Microsoft now, and he's only 30-year-old and owes nobody anything.
That is a month.
A year.
Oh,
US, not Jamaica. 200 something, right, with top security clearance. How many lawyers, how many doctors making that in the United States? Many of them not making that kind of money. Just with a 18-month program, had no bells and whistle and big certificates and whatever, and you're walking down with a cap and a gown and whatever. No. See? It's called skill.
Yes.
Skill. Can't beat a skill man. Skill man making 200 and odd thousand a year. And guess what? What the average college person making in the United States? Not even $35,000 good, and have a student loan of
true.
80, 90, 100,000 after that 4 years. So you see how we are trapped? Right? Yet it is pumped in our brain that listen, those technical schools, those skills, don't go there. Those are for the people who can't read and write much, who couldn't make it to the top. Because what? They entrap us to go there. Now when you go there, what you have to study? You have to study humanities. What is humanities? You have to study all sorts of wickedness and garbage that tell you man come from monkey and this and all sorts of, and homosexuality is a normal behavior and all that wickedness. By the time you get out of college, you are no longer Seventh-day Adventist in many ways.
It's really worse now. I mean, it's worse than. No, seriously, we don't really talk about it. And basically, I would say that every one of us need to give a listening ear to this because this is the one big problem. I've often wondered why is it that educated person, a person who is a banker, a person who is a doctor, person who is a teacher, will end up broke like dog
With the student loan too. With the student.
indebted up to your highball. And I was wondering about it, and it is
Worldly ambition.
it is no, it's not that. It's not this thing is not it's
Well
not
designed.
it is not an accident.
No.
This is well designed. And it isn't now I must say and people don't understand. We don't and the thing is because of how the structure of our church is set up now, the discussion doesn't take place. Even among those who are as
So
Adventists who have been
elder
here.
school, when you hear education day, what do they highlight? Right? The academia part, right?
Yes.
Going to our schools, passing the CXC, going on to NCU, or you with the person who is a successful painter, carpenter, whatever, coming from hard program is never mentioned. I saw at your church at Signum there, the last whatever day, education day. And they brought in this fellow, I'm not going to call name, and he was just extolling at one time how his father worked with his hand as a carpenter and put them through school, the good father, good husband. But when he was commending those who successfully accomplished their educational achievement, it's only those who came from the high school and the universities. The people like his father, who had a trade and worked ardently and put people like him through school, did not get any mention.
No, but it would be so because basically we don't count skill work as a part of that. The thing is that if we understand, we still lock our religion within the box of the walls of our church. And so when time we leave out of our church, we go to work. And the work now have anything for it, but that is not how Satan put it. The education system is actually meant for as a trap.
Oh, and it is.
Nothing is taught about a practical life
Yes.
in our education system. You don't know it. Half of the subject them that you learn, you don't see the practical
They are
application.
called liberal arts, liberation
Just
from
like
labor. That's what they are called. Liberal arts mean liberation from labor.
Freedom.
So you're liberated because you can pass the O levels and you get the degree and whatever. So you are liberated from doing anything
Freedom.
physical, which is labor. Go ahead.
I mean, very difficult, very, very but it's dangerous for an
Yeah,
Adventist
come help
No,
me.
because if you are trapped in
Yeah,
the
when-
situation, because one, most of the bankers, most of the banks, and most of the things that are now set are set to trap person who came back their education.
Yes.
You get, I was, and I'm going to use myself as an example, a bad one, but if somebody may learn from it. I remember being at school one day, and another teacher came to me and said, "You know, I got a credit card." Oh yes, Lord. So, having no, I would say common sense because of
We
that
all
kid I
pass
said,
through that.
yeah. So I ended up with a credit card. As in friend, call me on the phone and they're very willing
Oh,
to
yes.
give you a credit
Oh,
card.
yes, you're a teacher.
Yes, you're a teacher with a set income.
Mhm.
Over time, I can tell you the end result of that was a credit card that had 40% interest
All right.
rate.
Okay.
Credit score.
And of course, that 100 that led to me being indebted up to as soon about 300 or so $1,000, and and that is one of the credit cards.
One.
No, but I'm sure no, I'm telling you how this thing work out. Why? Because I was illiterate
Oh, yes. And they
to
want to
what
keep you that way.
to what this thing is. And not only me, if I was the what to say, oh, me stupid more than everybody, but I know me alone.
No, no.
Many
Lots
of
of
them,
people.
and then another trap is set. All right, you run up your credit card debt and you have a debt, you owe mortgage and you owe credit card and you barely can find money to pay
Bad credit score.
something there. And basically what you end up with, the bank says, come in man, we will give you a consolidative loan.
Mhm.
House now comes into play.
Right.
Your house is a collateral.
Yes.
Mhm.
And basically now that now
They own your
is it.
house.
And basically that
You only
is
sleep in there.
exactly. So this now, hello, but this if we'll talk about it here like this. Now if you take a check among Adventists, with all you look on church and Saturday and you see all of those nice pretty people rolling in.
On credit.
You check
We're a
on
church on credit.
so basically what we're finding out is that basically is it what will happen? What will happen
Where the school of the
if this
church is
thing
on credit.
but it,
Right now, the tiles of the floor that we're not walking on are on credit.
All right.
Right? Yeah, the building is on credit.
Everything.
Our
The
roof
members
is
are
on
on
credit.
credit too.
The roof is on credit. Even our light bill is on credit.
Everything is on credit.
but the thing is that when now this becomes practical.
No, but if practical is on credit, don't pay for it.
No, but I'm saying that when if the system should crash today, as
It's going to, as it's going to
yes.
sometime.
All goes back
Yes,
to them.
we are going to find ourselves out of, and it is going to be so terrible. But I'm saying that but this discussion does not take place.
No,
It
no,
not
no,
happen.
no, it will not. And let me tell you why it is
You
not.
understand?
Because ignorance, the greatest thing we can suffer from is ignorance. If you had known when the thief is coming to break into your house, you would be away. And the Bible tell you about these things. My people are destroyed for what? Lack of knowledge, which is ignorance. Right? Now, think about what our school has done with our church. Right? Now the Bible says, "Oh no man anything."
That's right.
Isn't that true?
Yes.
Spirit of prophet say, "Avoid death like the plague of leprosy." Yet NCU and just Oakwood, Loma Linda, get your children and you in debt to
Yes.
keep to get that to provide a paycheck for their teachers, otherwise called professor. Right? Where your child now comes out owing how much debt, many a times can't get a job because that liberal arts degree that they pursue, right, does not make them in many cases qualified to get anything, or when they get something, for many of them it's not anything much. So they are owned by Babylon for as many years as that debt is there. Oh yes, that's what happened. Our church has done that to us. Not only that, just like the elder said this morning, Jesus and John the Baptist, it is said in the book Bizarre Pages, were not could not be sent. Their parents could not, Mary and Elizabeth could not send them to the schools of the prophets, else it would make them unfit to be the Lord's messenger and carry out the work the Lord and purpose the Lord has them. Now, just imagine that was 2,000 years ago when the educational system was nothing as dangerous as it is today. And yet, the schools of the prophets. No, it was schools of the prophets.
Yes.
It started out under Samuel as school of the prophets, Prophets. And by the time Christ and John the Baptist, it became school of the Profits, which has continued until now.
Okay.
That's all it is. It's about money. I know I can be blacklisted and I don't care, but I have to speak the truth.
Yes.
Right? You see, our many in our leadership are in cahoot with Babylon, enslaving our people.
They don't know.
Some of them know school and some of them don't know. Because some of them are drunk with the wine of Babylon, so they don't know. But some of them know because they will be hearing people like you and I saying this evening, and they just wave us off and say, and listen, ban us from even coming to the church.
But I'm saying that they won't even listen
No, they won't
to an
listen.
argument like that.
Right.
They don't.
But the fascinating thing about this is that we took as Adventists a book called True Education and some other
And the
education
broken
which
blueprint.
tells us that our schools should be in the country and we are learning agrarian arts and everything that we learn must have this contact, technical, tactile thing about it. And that if we were learning that way, even the thing where we have to put P on the curriculum would not be needed because our physical abilities would be used up in our training hands-on, but which would provide for what you say and keep us out of Babylon system. But that is not our case.
So I want to go right back to the beast. What is a beast? Not lion-like, not bear-like. It is what? Leopard-like, because through Hellenization, right, that is where Rome is getting most of us today. Not through the lamb-like quality, not through the bear-like quality, through Hellenization, through the educational system, through the society, the culture of society. We are being, right, Hellenized, right, without knowing it. So what is happening then? Okay, here we are, as Adventists 20 million strong, pretty much, and said we won't take this on the law. All right, and we mean it like Peter, who said, listen, he wouldn't betray Jesus, he would deny Jesus. Though everybody run away from your Lord, I will be the one. I'll even draw up my sword, so to speak. And he didn't say that, but he did that. But yet it was Peter who later on ran after denying Jesus 3 times. Now why? Because Peter did not escape that education, the goal of that educational system. You see, it began way back when the Jews said, when the Israelites said they wanted another king like the other nations. That was where it began. When they rejected Samuel as their judge and God as their king, looked around and saw what the other nations had. We did the same thing with our school, when we had a non-accredited school that were putting our children, right? We had Madison as an example that our elder spoke about this morning, right? And we said, and even though Madison had proven itself, we said, no, we don't want that. We want schools like the other nation, kings like the other nation. And so we got them, and what did they do? Right. Now, I heard him talking about the damage of John Harvey Kellogg, and that's true. But there's a man called Percy Magan, was used by the devil to do more damage in the Adventist church than even John Harvey Kellogg. Let me tell you why I can't do that. See, John Harvey Kellogg was taking our medical system, and even to a certain extent our church, into pantheism and so on. But Percy Magan, who helped establish Madison College, right, that many of us know about, right, that became a top world-renowned school with no accreditation, no debt, no student loan, no whatever, right? You see, right? Where it turned out students who, even during the Great Depression, were not looking job. None of the Madison student was idle, and they hardly looked job. They were job creators rather than job seekers, and that's what we are to be. We are not to be looking for Babylon for job. We are to be creating jobs. Right? The Chinaman doesn't look for job that easily. Right? He creates job. We leave Jamaica like myself and went to the United States to look job. And we can speak English. The Chinese come from Hong Kong And China can't speak English, many of them, and they do not come seeking employment. They come making money because they are employers, they are business people, right? That makes a difference. They are the head in that case. We are the tail. So here it is that so Madison College proved itself. And instead of the brethren looking at Madison and said, we are going to now structure Oakwood, Loma Linda, Andrews, and these places after Madison. They eventually were able to get their hand on Madison and kill it. But then they had Percy McGann, who left Madison before that, and he went to Loma Linda, and this is where his effect was. For Loma Linda to put out medical doctors, it needed to come under the American Medical Association, the witchcraft capital of medicine. In order for them to do that, right, to put out these doctors licensed by the AMA, they had to be now accredited, Loma Linda. In order for Loma Linda to be accredited, Oakwood and the other colleges had to be accredited. In order for Oakwood and these colleges had to be accredited, our high school had to be accredited. In order for our high school to be accredited, our elementary school had to be accredited. So you see what happened?
They put it under control of the
Exactly.
Of the government.
Of Babylon. Exactly. And what accreditation is like a square hole that you as a round peg, because you know the Lord wants us rounded, right? Oh yes, the Lord wants us well rounded in all manner areas of life. So while you're not a lawyer, but at least the basic little things you can do. You're not a doctor, but you're a medical missionary. You're not an evangelist, but you know can do your little thing, missionary and whatever, and you know. Exactly. Right. That's what the Lord intended. But no, right? What they said you should specialize. So you come to their school and you will be you be like a bio person, or you be like a physicist or whatever, and you just don't venture into no other field, learn carpentry or nothing at all. So this was the educational system that Percy McGann pushed the church into, and the church accepted it. And so here we are today, right? Accredited in the mold of Babylon, and owing Babylon how much money, right? Dependent upon Babylon for a job, dependent upon Babylon medical system, dependent upon Babylon light system, water, food, everything. But we are in church on Sabbath and we said we are out of Babylon. We are not out of Babylon. We've been chained to Babylon without realizing it.
Another one of the
Yeah, let me.
You know, listening to you, I remember some time ago, me and Greta and Brother School had a conversation, and now that you're talking about it, it just resonates with me. The another big deception that the church is in is financial freedom. And financial freedom comes from, we think, market management, such as companies like Amway, Amway own World Ventures, yeah,
network.
Amway own World Ventures and all of those products, but there's one company, and many of our Adventists are in these companies. You're actually working for them, so you're working for a company to think, and they sell you the idea that you're going to be financially free. And years upon top of years, you're never financially free, but you're working for them and make so
You're their slave.
you're paying them to work for them.
Exactly. Definitely.
By
You're so
selling
right.
their products.
Definitely. You're so right.
Now, there is a doctrine that is mentioned in Revelation 3:15 to talk about the doctrine of the Nicolaitans,
Yes.
which come from the word Nicolaits. Nico being victory over the people, and the lay will be the people. So Nicolation means victory over the people. What this does is that it creates, as you talk about the roundedness, that if I am not trained in this area, then I can't be an authority. So in the same way with the whole matter of what is doctrinally correct. If you are not, if you don't come through the particular system of the 4-year training, then nothing that is being said from the layperson will be accepted because it's not an authority. And that moves not just from the whole matter of the religion, it goes to whether you're a doctor. I'm a medical missionary. I might not be a trained doctor, but I have other skills. They won't listen to what I'm saying. They won't listen to what he's saying because he doesn't have the MD behind his name. And it goes into the whole field of law. So what the accreditation does is that if you have the skill, they are forcing you to get the all of these degrees, so you can be seen as an authority on the issue.
Definitely.
So it creates a monopoly upon knowledge,
Let me
which we didn't want.
let me share. I know I have to wrap up, but let me share something with you. Just one example. When I was a kid, many of us, right, boil our own oil called coconut oil. All right, and I'm going there because I'm just showing you one little example of how we as a church and we as a society rely on these Nicolaitans, right? Rely on these so-called experts, right? So here we are boiling our own coconut oil, hardly buying any oil back in 50, 60 years ago. You're a young kid, you're a young hurricane, you're a young bird, you don't know hurricane, right? But many of us can relate to that, all right? You know, some of us here, at least. Now, that made us okay. We uh-huh.
No. Statistics show that 2% of Amway persons are actually poor. 2%. No. No.
Your point there to a certain extent, both of you, I can share with you. What happened is only roughly 2% of the people who go into this, right, are really successful. And let me tell you why. In order to be successful in that business, you have to have the gift of salesmanship, right? You have to be savvy, exactly, right, and get in there early, right, at the ground level there when things come. When you get into it, where most of the people are already in there, you put your money in. You are not a salesman, which most people are not, like myself, right? You see, so guess what? You have this for many of them, this monthly, this and this whatever, keeping how much people in your downline and whatever. For most people, they don't. Then for those who are really good at sales, just as he said, right? They take their mind completely off the gospel,
Only
right?
2%
You
of
see?
those.
Right? So basically, it is a trap anyway you put it. Trap for those who are not salespeople and put their money and time in there and not going anywhere. Trap for those who are real good salespeople, make the money but lose out where the gospel is concerned. So it's a trap anyway you take. Right? So let's get back to but thanks for what you said. Let's get back to the coconut issue. Right? So here it is that they told us, the so-called expert, the Babylonians, told us that listen, coconut should not be used because it has cholesterol in it. And we as a church, who as a science department, right, you see, went along with them and said, oh, Adventists, don't use coconut oil because it will clog your heart with all that cholesterol. Hold it now. Our doctors said the same thing, our nutritionists, our nurses, our dietitian, our scientists, they said the same thing. Just because Babylon said it, they were parrots and still continue today. All right? Now, let's break this coconut thing down. And just one example, all right, show you how this false educational system has led us where we are today. And there are many other examples out there. One of the first biology lessons you'll have, right? It says that liver is the only thing that can make cholesterol. No brain, no heart, no lungs, no pancreas can make. Only liver. Bio 101. All right? Let me ask you now, which plant you ever see out there with a liver? Can't. Because it does not have blood. And liver has to purify blood and be supported by the blood. So when they came up with that, we Adventists should have said, no, you are wrong. Can't have cholesterol because it cannot have a liver because there's no blood in the plant, right? To support the liver. So that's number one, out of the water. No, we went along. And we tell our people not to buy coconut and whatever. And so now they started buying corn oil, vegetable oil, canola oil, right? Soybean oil and all of these, which the white man, the Babylonian, the Chinaman, the Indian man, the black man, whoever is that comprised Babylon, was so glad. Because guess what? They knock out our coconut industry and all the coconut industry in the tropical areas around the globe. And so make us dependent on their oil. Now they introduce the coconut oil, and once again now they said it is the best oil. But can you and I buy it?
Raise the price.
A And then
You see?
mostly produce.
And they are the ones who produce it, right? Because we don't know how to. And then, by the way, how are we going to produce oil when that is handwork and that's dirty work? Right? To get a coconut and to cut it, to take it out of the husk, you know how much work that is, right? To shred it, then to blend it, right? Even though we don't use grater anymore.
Coconut oil them selling at stores, you know.
Oh.
And you know.
Oh yes, oh definitely, right? So all I'm saying, brethren, in closing on this, right? When we look at that beast is not actually the greatest threat is not posed by the beast persecuting us. It's posed by the beast seducing us into
Deception.
right into its culture, and that is what is really happening. You see, just listen to this. Margaret has Sister Francis gave me a white shirt. I go home with it. Margaret said, "Who gave that to you?" Right? This I said, "Oh, it's Sister Francis. Don't did I tell you not to take anything from women?" All right. So she grabbed the white shirt and pull on it, and the white shirt is really good cotton. So I pull it away from her, right? And I said, "Please, don't mess with don't tear my white shirt or cut it up." She said no, and she meant it. So I hung it up in the closet, and I'm off for 4 weeks. When I come back, that white shirt is looking just the same. Little did I know that Margaret soaked the white shirt in bleach for 3 weeks. Get out the bleach scent out of it and iron it and hang it up right there. The shirt is looking pretty, but the fiber is gone. It's as weak as anything. So I take up the shirt and I said, teasing her now, thinking the shirt is as strong. I said, dear, you like my shirt from Sister Francis? She grabs at it and I have the shirt on and it exposes me. Exactly what's happening to us. All right? The devil is not using persecution now to destroy most Adventists. It is using the bleach, seduction, Hellenization, right, to destroy us. It's sucking us in, right, to its values, to its system. While we drive nice cars, big houses, our children get nice education, but not knowing that when persecution is brought to bear upon his church, page 608 of the Great Controversy, say a large class abandon their position and take ranks with the enemy. Why? Because in lifestyle, they are so aligned themselves with the world, the pleasures of the world, the education of the world, everything of the world. But you couldn't tell that this was going to happen because they drive the nicest cars to church. They are Sabbath school leaders, elders, you name it, and whatever. But you see, the devil got them through Hellenization.
But the coroner shows up this now.
And yes, the coroner shows this up. So, brethren, in closing, what am I saying to you? We need to go back home and we need to take really introspect of ourselves. Where are we headed? How dependent are we on Babylon? Right? Are we really striving to be self-sufficient? Right? Do we have our children in those schools? If over 100 years ago the Lord said that these children would help to make an image of the beast, we see the Prime Minister, we see the Governor General, right, full-fledged in this educational system, helping to institute a foundation for the mark of the beast. Why do you think our children are going to escape it? Right? You look at our conference president, Levi Johnson, who said that the state gave us 2 days to shop. And yet Julian Robinson of the PMP said we got 1 day. How could a non-Adventist, a Gentile, know that we got 1 day to shop? Yet our conference president, right, said we got 2 days to shop. Brethren, it is definitely food for thought. But more than food for thought, it calls for revival and reformation. It calls for change of direction. Don't look to the conference. Don't look to me. I can't look to you. We have to go to God.
Yes.
On our knees, with the Bible, with the spirit of prophecy. And brethren, some people might laugh at you, because some of you will have to get out of Shedwin Park and Spanish Town and Kingston and maybe go up under in the country under a tree to start life out. I didn't say you are to do that, but maybe that is why, like Lot, the Lord stripped us of everything,
Yes.
right? Just to save our soul.
Amen.
All right? Because we've been too long in Babylon. We've been too entrenched in Babylon. Right? And that is really where our problem is. Yes, Elder.
And that is why the prophecy is so correct.
third angel message calling people out of Babylon cannot take place until the Son, the Lord. As you said, plenty will just go into the country and are trees. Because God will have to start over this process of the education. We have to come out of the embodiment of the leper, all the practices that comes with it. Because you mentioned somebody, if you have
There's so much.
another week,
Yes, this subject could go all along. I'm writing a book on it.
but that's why God is raising up a set of people and gradually taking them step by step out of this process. And we know that the country living and the education of our
Right,
children at
right.
home will be one of these principles,
Definitely.
right?
So you see, just like the children of Israel said that they wanted a king like the other nations, right? And God said, and they said, Samuel, choose us a king, right? Roughly almost 1,000 years later, they didn't say Samuel choose us a king, although Samuel wasn't around. They said we'll have no king but Caesar. Now, can you imagine? They turned Jesus down, rejected Jesus as their king, and said we'll have no king but Caesar. Right? Same thing we are saying. Right? We want schools like the other nations. See, it was a king that the devil used to pretty much model them, modify them, right, into the order of Babylon. Today is not king because we don't have kings in the world that much or in our church, right? It is the school is. So we erected schools like the other nations.
They want no school but those of Babylon.
Exactly, right? Because we want schools like Babylon, and that is what has defeated us, destroyed us. That we are a society today, right? That we are impotent. Coronavirus, and you see what has happened. Let this be a lesson to us to turn to God.
Amen.
Right? If the Lord said, if my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and seek my face and turn, in this case, turn from the Babylonian dependence and ways. He said, then will I hear from heaven, will forgive their sins and will heal their land. And the last one, hear ye, O Judah, and ye inhabitants of Jerusalem. Believe in the Lord your God, so shall ye be established. Believe his prophets, so shall ye prosper. Brethren, we can prosper. And I know it. Because all I'm sharing with you this evening, I can tell you, I've proven it. When it came to Malcolm, for those of you who didn't know, he couldn't read at 13. 13-year-old, the kid can't read. If you give his name on a bowl of cake, he eat it without knowing it. Right? He said, Malcolm, I'm going to kill you unless you can read. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And you have to kill Malcolm because he couldn't read it. At 13. Yet, and so if he were in the Babylonian school or even our school, they kill him with Ritalin or other drugs or write him off that something is wrong. Yet at 13, Malcolm began to read. At 13, he built his first computer, used it for a year, and sold it to a white fellow in Orlando for $800 a year later. At 14, he extracted hydrogen out of water to make his first hydrogen bomb at 14. And at 16, 3 years after he began reading and writing, he was through with not only first, second, or third grade, but all the way up to 12th grade, which is the completion of high school. Landed himself in college at 16, studying computer hardware engineering, one of the toughest courses when it comes to maths, chemistry, physics. It's an engineering course. You have to go to it's a 5-year course for a bachelor's degree, so you must know it's tough. It comes with a lot of lab classes and what. And the first 3.5 years, straight A's, never a B. Right? Landed himself, finishes the course of 5 years in 4.5 years. Landed himself his first job paying him $90,000 a year with a defense company in Virginia. Now he's at Microsoft at 23, right? Making $170,000 a year as a skilled person, right? You see, and also with top security clearance. Michael, pretty much the same thing. Work with a different defense company as I computer software engineering. So we have 3 computer software engineer in the family. Maurice is in medical school, at least that he can work on his own when he graduates. And Melissa is a nurse, right? Went through school, straight A's. All of them were homeschooled until they were ready for college, as I've told some of you, right? So when I'm talking about homeschool, don't believe I'm talking about something backward. Right? Jesus was homeschooled. Yet anybody on the face of this earth was smart like that fella and witty,
John the
right? I
Baptist.
say John the Baptist too, Right? You see? So what I'm saying, homeschool is not for the little children that you might believe that, well, they can't make it in regular school. Because let me say this. Homeschoolers are sought after by Harvard, Yale, and the Ivy League school more than any other. Because what? They are more well-rounded to manage a course. They do not go with the flow and want the we wear the pants down here, want to wear the shirt outside. They are well disciplined. Plus, they score higher on the ACT and the SAT than the public school and even the private schools. Because what? You see, God said, "Them that honor me, I will honor." So, brethren, you might have to start now thinking. Not might have to. You have to make plans to pull your children out of school. I'm not kidding you. People used to laugh at us in Jamaica. Some of us are behind my back. Oh, homeschool. Now everybody is homeschooled because of COVID.
Yes.
You see what the Lord made sure? No, no,
Yes.
no. So homeschool wasn't good for our children because the Casey. Now, what happened? You see? Homeschool. All right? Brethren, take it from the Lord. Don't let the world accept it before we do. All right. If the Lord said it was so good for John the Baptist, it was even so good for Jesus. What's wrong with it? It is character for eternity, not a liberal arts degree for you to make money to put in your pocket or whatever, or your children. So take it that listen. It's all about character for eternity. May the Lord bless you.
Amen. Amen. Well said.
All right, that was a mouthful. We can't say that we weren't blessed. So yes, we want to thank Dr. Morgan for being here and for sharing with us, and even all the rest of speaker from morning until now. We have been blessed, and we want to give God thanks.
Amen.
We have to take it while we can get it because we don't know when we will get it like this again. So let us give God thanks. So as we prepare to close the Sabbath officially, we want to stand and sing the hymn 262. 262.
After the prayer. After the prayer, we pray to God.
Which shone so bright in saints of old, which led their souls to heaven's path, come in distress, in danger bold. Where is that Spirit, Lord, which dwells in Abraham's breast and sealed him thine, which made Paul's heart with sorrow melt and glow with energy divine? That Spirit came from age to age, broken thy love and taught thy ways, brighten our fire's vivid page, and breathe in David hollow place. Is not thy grace that's mighty now, as when Elijah felt its power, when glory beamed from Moses' brow, or Job endured the trying on? Remember, Lord,
Spirit.
Amen. You may be seated for a short while we just meditate. You know, as we put the theme this afternoon, that leopard like beast, you know, very tricky. You know, how it comes into our midst. It camouflage itself among us, and then it struck. You know, when we look at this psalm, you know, verse 4 is one of my favorite ones. It is asking,